DreAllDay.com. DreAllDay.com, balloverseas.com, the Overseas Basketball Blueprint. The question that we are addressing here today are, what are the requirements for playing professional basketball overseas? Well, the most simple, basic, and the easiest to understand, but also the hardest to meet requirement for playing basketball overseas is you got to be good enough to play overseas, comma, and you have to have a team who believes you are good enough to play basketball overseas. So it's not just you believing it, because if everyone who believed they were good enough to play overseas was actually playing overseas, then we would need like 3 or 4 more planet Earths for everybody to have a job, because there are not enough jobs for everyone who thinks they're good enough to play overseas to actually play overseas. So understand this requirement, if you're reading between the lines of what I'm saying here, is that you gotta sell yourself as well as be good on the court. You gotta take both of those jobs. They are not one and the same. Your ability to play, of course, will help sell you, but you also gotta do some sales work in order to get people to pay attention to you. So the biggest requirement is that you gotta have game and you gotta prove it to somebody, and they gotta believe it. They have to agree that you have game. Other requirements for playing professional basketball overseas, if you are traveling from, and we're just gonna call overseas being you're from one place and you're gonna play in a different country, that you need to have clearance from your country and from the country that you are going to play in, clearance to leave your country and also clearance to enter the other country. And in reverse, you're gonna need clearance to leave that country when you're done and clearance to get back into your country when it's over. Usually, that clearance is in the form of a passport. In the United States, there's the US passport, which hopefully every player who's listening to me right now, you already have a passport. If you don't have a passport, you should go acquire a passport as quickly as possible, because especially right now with a worldwide pandemic, which I guess is mostly American, at least as of the summer of 2020, called the COVID-19 pandemic, the US government actually slowed down their process for processing people's passports. So a lot of players don't know that, but I wrote about this in the Overseas Basketball Secrets book, that usually when it comes to passports, you can submit your paperwork for the passport and you would get it. And the passport costs about $110 cash, not cash, but you got to pay $110 to get it. It usually takes like 4 to 6 weeks for you to actually receive the passport. And understand that a passport is a physical book that you get. It's like a little tiny booklet, and you have to have that to travel outside of USA. They also have a passport card, and you can optionally get the card and the passport book, but you must have the passport book to travel outside of USA. So if you live in Kentucky and you got a flight to Spain and you get to the airport and you got the passport card but you forgot the book, you cannot travel. When you check in for your flight at the counter, that's before you even get up to security and all that. When you check in at the counter, if you don't have that passport book, they're gonna tell you like, yo, you can't get on that plane. So you make sure you gotta have the book with you. And if you just got a deal, let's say today you're listening to me and then you get a contract offer 2 weeks from now, and then you go fill out your passport paperwork, well, that team might need you over there before 6 weeks. And now you shit out of luck because you didn't have your passport ready. So make sure you go get your passport paperwork right now. Any of you players who is planning on playing professional basketball as soon as possible, meaning like if a team offered to sign you today, you would get on the plane tomorrow, go get your passport. Now, if you're in high school and you're just watching this for interest because you think maybe after high school and after college, then you'll play overseas, then maybe I guess you can delay, but look, maybe your family wants to go on vacation. All right, so you're gonna need a passport as well. So get your passport paperwork in, because as I was saying, as of COVID-19, the US government slowed down how much time they're taking to give people passports, on top of first of all, because they have less people working. Second of all, because there's not a lot of international travel going on, because every country is afraid of somebody else's country's occupants bringing COVID-19 to their country. Everybody thinks that somebody else is going to bring the COVID-19. And the US also, there was a time you could expedite your passport. You could get your passport in 2 weeks instead of 4 to 6 weeks. You had to pay extra. It might be an extra $35, $50, $100, but you would get it faster. But what I read on the US passport website just today is that they are not offering expedited services at all. So everybody got to wait 4 to 6 weeks. So any of y'all who didn't know that, you know it now. Do not sleep and end up losing your opportunity to play overseas because you didn't have a damn passport. That could be the worst reason to not play overseas. So that's another requirement, is you must have legal clearance from your country and from the host country, that's wherever you're going, to actually travel to play basketball overseas. The other requirements, this is not technically a requirement. The two things I told you there are actual requirements, because if nobody believes you're good enough, you will never get a job. And if you do not have a passport, then you can never leave the country. So there's no way you can play overseas without those two things. Those are the only actual requirements that are like hard, factual data. But I'm gonna give you some other things that I'm gonna call quote unquote requirements, meaning if you violate these, you will blow your opportunity. All right, so understand, everybody got that? Everything I'm saying from this point forward are quote unquote requirements. They're not actual requirements, but if you don't have these, in every case that I've seen, you're gonna blow it. All right, this next requirement, quote unquote, is you must be in shape. Be in basketball shape. Understand something, ladies and gentlemen, basketball shape is not the same shape as the dude who works as an accountant full time, but he goes to the gym every day and does CrossFit and a boot camp class. Basketball shape is not the person who plays pickup 3 times a week at Equinox against NFL players and rappers and some influencers, and they think they can hoop because they got 10,000 followers and likes on Instagram. That is not basketball shape. Basketball shape is playing professional basketball. And you know what happens in professional basketball that doesn't happen in your local rec leagues? You got to play offense and defense. You know what else happens in pro basketball that doesn't happen in some pro-am that you play in? If you don't run up and down the court on offense or defense, you're walking up and down the court on a play because you're just being lazy, or you got bad habits, or you're just tired, all right, you will not be on the team. All right, let alone will you not be in the game anymore, but you won't be on the team anymore. All that shit that happens in those leagues and those games, you can't do when you're playing professional basketball. You got to be able to run up and down that court every play, every change of possession, over and over and over again. That's game shape. That's what I call game shape. I already did content talking about this exact subject, but this is a requirement. And since we're talking about requirements here, I'm going over it again. And I guarantee you keep listening to me, I will bring this up again, because I've seen too many players blow their opportunity, or what may have become an opportunity, because they weren't in game shape. Now, often many of the players I've seen who weren't in game shape were also not good players. But had they been in game shape, maybe they might have been a little bit better of a player. Who knows? We'll never know, because they weren't in shape and their lungs were falling out of their chest before we even got done the layup drills. So make sure that's not happening to you. Be in game shape. And by the way, do y'all know how to get in game shape? Or it's not by playing in games. You do not get in game shape by playing in games. All right? You're not Shaquille O'Neal where you can just play your way into shape. All right? Unless you're Shaq. If you're Shaq, then you don't need to be watching this, because you won't be overseas. You'll be in the NBA. But the rest of y'all, game shape, do what your coaches made you do in college. Do what your coaches made you do in high school. Do what your personal trainer would make you do. Be out there running sprints. Take 30 seconds off between suicides and run another one. Do that stuff. And don't give yourself any long breaks to check your phone or get back to feeling great before you start sprinting again, because your coach wouldn't do that. I played overseas. I'll tell you, one time I was overseas and the coach felt like the team wasn't in shape. So you know what happened at practice. We did these sprints. We had to run like suicides or run lines or whatever it was. He split us up into 2 groups. All right, first group up. When I blow the whistle, y'all got to do whatever it was he had us doing. Then the next group up, boom. Then the next group, boom. It was like you got like 30 seconds break in between. Everybody's lungs were burning. Everybody's chest was burning at the end. Everybody was just waiting for the coach to be done. Nobody was talking because everybody was breathing too hard to talk. We were all just waiting for it to be over, but we had to go through that. That's what, you already know that, all right? I'm not telling you anything that you don't know about, that you never heard of before and that you haven't experienced. That's what your coach makes you do to be in shape. Do that to yourself. This is what we call discipline. It's what we call being a professional. You need to do this for yourself in the off season, or if you never had a deal overseas, your whole life is the off season, do this all the time. Be in shape. You don't have to get in shape. You should stay in shape. You're a professional athlete. It is your job to be in shape. I know I'm taking a lot of time on this, but I've seen too many players blow their opportunities by missing out on this very simple point. So make sure you're in shape. That's another requirement. That's the first quote unquote requirement. Another quote unquote requirement for playing professional basketball overseas, you got to understand the game. You got to know how to play. Know what it means to run a pick and roll. If you're a guard and you don't know what a pick and roll is and you don't know how to run one, it's going to be very obvious the first time you fail at it, and that could cost you your job. Know how to play the game. Go find a point guard or a guard who plays at the pro level, who knows how to run a pick and roll, and let them explain it to you. Let them show it to you. Work out with them. Let them go over the things that you need to understand to be able to run what is a very, very basic and is a very, very common, happens all the time play in overseas basketball. If you don't know how to run a pick and roll and you're a guard, all right, you're in trouble. All right, be able to run the pick and roll. If you're a big as well, be able to run the pick and roll. The only player who might be able to get away with not knowing anything about the pick and roll, but you can still have a job, is a wing player. If you're a good versatile wing who's athletic, you can play D, you can do some things offensively, you may not be asked to handle the ball that much, and you're not the one who's going to be setting the screen either, so you might be able to get away with it. So learn how to run a pick and roll, especially if you are a guard. Be able to run the pick and roll. That is part of understanding the game. Know how to move without the ball. I get basketball players asking me this often, like my coach told me I need to move without the ball, or my teammates tell me I need to learn how to move without the ball, or I need to learn spacing and being in the right spot on the floor. If you don't understand these concepts, you need to go play in games with and against players who can actually play. And then when the game is over, check this out, that's not the whole thing. When the game is over, go talk to the players who look like they know what they're doing and ask questions. Be a student. Be ignorant. Accept your ignorance. All right, ignorance doesn't mean you're stupid. Ignorance means you don't know something. If you do not know these things, go find players who do know them and talk to them. Shut up and let them tell you, let them show you, let them teach you. These are things that you got to be willing to do as a professional athlete. You don't know everything. You don't need to pretend like you know everything. But if you don't know these things and you don't take the effort to learn them, you don't make the time investment to learn these things, you could lose your entire career off this. Trust me, you will lose your opportunity, and your entire career might be one opportunity. You blow that one, you don't get another one. That's your whole career right there. One opportunity because you don't know how to space the floor. You don't know how to move off the ball. You should understand basic sets. If a coach says play 2-3 defense and you don't know what that is, that's a fundamental error on your part of not understanding. That's a basic defensive set. You don't know what that is, you can't play. If the coach says play man-to-man defense and the ball is on the other side of the floor and you're guarding somebody on, again, the opposite side of the floor from where the ball is, and you don't know where to be, and you don't have a general idea where you need to be, then that is a fundamental error of you not understanding the game, and that could cost you your job. The coach is going to be looking at you like, all right, this guy doesn't even know how to play basketball. You face guarding somebody and the ball's on the other side of the floor. What are you doing? You're not in help position. You don't have one foot in the paint. You don't see the ball in the man. What are you doing? The coach says play 2-1-2 defense, or 1-2-2 defense, or we're going to play a 3-2 zone, or we're going to play on offense. We're going to run the flex offense, or we're going to run the pick and roll. And these are basics. I want y'all to understand everything that I just said are basics. And if you don't know these things and you don't have anybody around you who may know them, go on YouTube. There are people who are coaches and players who do this stuff. They diagram it, they explain it, they make how-to videos explaining to you how to space the floor, how to move without the ball. All this information is available to you all on the internet, so there's no excuse. There might have been an excuse before now because you didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't even know you were supposed to know these things. Now you know. No excuses. Understand these basics. So I'm going to cut it off at that. So to play basketball overseas, well, here are the requirements. Number one, you must have game and get someone else to agree that you have game who can actually sign you to a contract. Number two, make sure you have legal clearance to actually travel outside of your country and into someone else's country, and vice versa, because you got to get back home, right? Don't lose your passport. You can't go home. And the quote-unquote requirements, these are not actual requirements, but I've never seen anybody succeed without them. Be in game shape. Understand how the game of basketball is played. All right, do not fail on any of these. These are all basics. If you didn't know they were basics, now you know they're basics. If you have not gotten your free copy of the Overseas Basketball Blueprint, 237-page book, tells you everything you need to know to start your professional basketball career overseas. Go to balloverseas.com right now. The book is already paid for. All you do is take care of the shipping. And if you want to talk to me one-on-one, where I ask you some questions about your journey, find out where you need help, and see where we can help you, go to balloverseas.com/call. The call is completely free. Just fill out a short form. Make sure your phone number is accurate in there and your name too. I'm going to call you, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask you some questions. I got some questions I want to ask. I'm going to find out what you need, and we're going to make sure that with your information, we tailor our future material to best help you. Work on your game. Dre, all day.